if you could build the perfect musician, these are traits that that person's going to do or ways that they'll look at the world.
Persistence. Persistence is key. Ambition. A lot of people that succeed have a driving ambition, and a lot of times they really can't do anything else.
Well, welcome to the podcast today. My special guest is Dr. Don Cusic from You're in Nashville right now, right, Don?
Right.
And I got to admit, I am very, very excited about just chatting with you today. I think the more I've learned about your story and your history, the more I think the amazing insights you're going to have. It's very rare that I get somebody that has a 2-page bio. And as I read through that, it was actually more than warranted, which was, I was just like, oh my goodness, this person you've just worked with so many amazing people and just you've got 30 books that you've published. You've done, I think, over 500, articles and
articles. Yeah.
It's just one of those where your take on musicians in general is going to be really interesting. So I think people are in for a real treat to kind of learn from you today. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. And the fact that I've written all those books and articles shows you that I am not a successful musician. But as we talked before going on the air, there's a lot more to the music business than just the music. So
absolutely, and I think what's interesting with the music's kind of that end product that comes out, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes to there's that journey, that struggle, that the final song that kicks out. That's what everybody hears, but the stories that happen along the way, or how somebody got to where they were to the struggle they went through, is really, I think, kind of the more special thing if you dive into it, right?
Yeah, but I teach at a place called Belmont University, and it's got a music business program right at the head of Music Row. And so we attract students, a lot of them whose parents are in the music industry, as well as students who, once they get here, they may have been discouraged at home. Well, you should be a doctor, you should be a lawyer, this, that, and that. But they get here and there's a whole support group. I remember there's this one girl who was in my office one day, and she was crying. And she said, where I grew up, nobody else played the guitar. I played the guitar. Nobody else wrote songs. I wrote songs. And she felt very special. And she got to Nashville and she said, and everybody plays the guitar and everybody wrote songs. Unfortunately, in her case, the songs weren't very good. But that's kind of what you see. It's the good and the bad. You've got this whole support group here, but also, I know in my days when I was a musician or when I played baseball, every year, every time you moved up, you got a little bit better until you got to the point where you ain't going to get no better. But the music will tell you that. The music business will tell you that. And the other thing is the music business is the music, the business, and the technology all roll together. And so when you look at the industry from that side, there's a lot of desk jobs. There's a lot of concert promotion. There's a lot of jobs that aren't playing music, but are part of the music business. And a lot of people figure out early on they wouldn't mind being a star if it wasn't so much trouble. And it's a lot of trouble, but it's a self-weeding process. You get down here, you have the opportunity to succeed, and people do. I've had 6 former students who've had a #1 country record.
Wow.
So,
well,
yeah.
and so you're in kind of the business side of music. And I think as you look at a lot of these musicians that come in, I know the creative brain or that creative write songs type of person oftentimes doesn't want to do business. They almost look at that as like the bad or evil side of things. And, what's funny is, so my story, I'm a piano player, and I lasted 2 days at the music program at my university out here in Utah where I'm at. And I dropped out on the end of the second day. and I went
Uh-huh.
over to the business school. And frankly, for my music career, that was going into marketing was probably the best decision I ever made for my music career that
Yeah.
I had no idea would be the case back then.
Yeah. Well, that's the people who succeed. Number one, they have uh, unbounded energy, and they're an extrovert. Those are key factors. But also, they learn enough. Because we have courses here. They're going to teach you copyright. They're going to teach you marketing. They're going to teach you, all of those things, and that makes you just savvy enough to know what's going on. Because if you have no clue whatsoever, that's when you're in trouble. And you see that with musicians who, it's like all I want to be is be heard. I don't care about the business side. And then a pile of money gets on the table, and all of a sudden they're ripped off. They say so and so ripped me off, or this ripped me off. It's not the case. It's just that part of that music business, part of you being a performer. And the successful ones do know at least the basics of business. They don't have to wear a suit and tie every day, but they need to know what copyright is, what the control composition clause is, and a few things like that because it affects them directly.
Well, and one thing I think has really been a game changer over the last, you know, 10 plus 10 years, I really feel like it's changed, but you used to have to kind of sign with a record label,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, there's pros and cons, I think, to both, to signing, but as an independent artist, I mean, it's almost become, in order to be successful with a label, I almost feel like a lot of artists need to make it as an indie artist before
Yeah.
sometimes they go even consider doing a label, because there's all of that organic, social
Mm-hmm.
media and just building your fan base that is really the thing that matters most. And the label
Yeah.
can't do that for you. It's either you're likable and you want to put yourself out there, or you're not, right?
Yeah, there's two things happening here. One is that the major labels are looking for acts who have a lot of streams, who have proven themselves in the market. And the other side is we have a lot of artists who have a lot of streams who don't want to be on a major label because they have a lot of freedom, like it is really an independent label because of social media. Um, they can succeed, but it takes constant self promotion. It really does. You talk about it being a business, it's a job. You've got to look at it as
Yep.
a job too. It's a creative side, but it's a job of getting all of these things done and establishing a career. Um, Taylor Swift taught Nashville about social media because she was like 14, 15. And you remember MySpace?
I do.
MySpace. She was on MySpace, and then of course um, Facebook comes in on the next level, and she was there all the time. Sitting in her bedroom or whatever, gathering friends, establishing that base, staying in touch, getting that. I mean, she's a textbook case of how to do it. Now she's at the level now that she didn't have to be sitting on the side of a bed in a bedroom texting everybody or emailing everybody. But that was that key to her success. I mean, she's certainly a talented writer. Uh, People have always been saying she couldn't sing. She sings good enough,
Yep.
but that's key building that audience, and she has managed to bring that audience along with her. That's rare. I mean, outside of
Right.
the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and a few acts like that, uh,
Like, I
they
think,
drop off. I mean,
so I had a chance a couple of years ago to sit down with Rick Barker for um, several hours and just chat with him. But one second, it looks like your video just froze up. Are you there?
on my end,
Oh,
yours is
oh, now
there's
you're back. Now you're
now
back.
you're back. Now you're
Oh,
back too.
I think it might. I don't know whether it's my internet or I just got a whole bunch. It might have been my internet. So um, I'll just start back here. So I had the opportunity to sit down with Rick Barker, who was Taylor
Mhm.
Swift's manager for several years, and just kind of listened to his story. We were just sitting out on a patio actually in Orlando one night, and it was interesting to listen to him just talk about some of the stories of how Taylor did come up, and how he'd kind of coached her along. But one of my big takeaways from hearing about that story is she was able, and I still think she does a really good job with this. She was able to be human and
Yeah.
relatable. And I think a lot of times these superstar, or the idea of being a rock star type of person, is now you're untouchable and you're too good for other people. And I
Mhm.
think in a lot of cases when that happens to some of these artists, they they have to have some space, because you do get some crazy fans out there. But
Yeah.
if you can, you look at what Taylor's been able to do, where she does pull people in, and she's very likable and very human, and
Hmm.
that I think's been a big difference. And that's not an easy thing to do day in and day out, and be on, essentially you're on stage because everybody's watching for you to do something
Yeah.
dumb and
Yeah.
criticize you, and that's a difficult place to be.
Yeah. Mental health, mental health's a big problem in this country today, obviously, but we're seeing it affect artists. You've got to have your act together. You've got to have some emotional grounding. You've got to have some people around you. Sometimes people criticize somebody who's still got their old friends. The Elvis Memphis Mafia. But that kind of keeps you sane, keeps you grounded.
Yeah.
Tom T. Hall one time said that whenever he felt he had the big head, he stood in front of a mirror and put a tennis shoe on top of his head and just looked into the mirror, and that kind of humbled him down just a bit. But you need that. I remember Mike Curb told me one time, said, with acts, you can talk to them on the way up, and you can talk to them on the way down, but you can't talk to them when they're on top. It's just you just can't get there.
Interesting. Well, so you've kind of been around the industry in Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
really for almost the last 50 years or so. But
Yeah.
what I've in learning more about Nashville and kind of where things have gone, it's interesting. Nashville wasn't a country music, or just wasn't even really even a music town for a long time. And I think Chicago was kind of that center
Mm-hmm.
of all of the country music back around World War II time. And then what was the difference, I guess, that kind of brought and made Nashville into what it is today?
It's interesting. In 1945, at the end of World War II, Nashville did not have a single recording studio or record company in town. And a guy named uh, Jim Boulay, it looked like Bullet, started Bullet Records, and he also started a distribution system, which you had to have in a pressing plant, in the vinyl days or shellac days at that time. And so that's established the groundwork. And Owen Bradley, who's one of the founders of Music Row, um, said that Ernest Tubb was approaching. Ernest Tubb was a big, big seller for Decca, and Decca had several big acts, Red Foley and um, Ernest Tubb on the roster. He said that they asked him if he wouldn't mind recording in Nashville, and the big hit had come out of Nashville, a pop hit called "Near You," and Ernest said yes. And Owen Bradley always said that if Owen had not said yes, they wouldn't have been able to become a recording center. And the other thing that played into that was the musicians union, and the union at that time kept a lot of country guys and blues guys out of the union. They didn't want, they were geared for big bands. They were geared for music literacy. You had to take a literacy test to get in. And the guy here, named Cooper, um, let in the country boys, and with that opened up network television. Uh, the musicians could make a living. It's not like, gee, I've got. Are you going to order dessert? I've got a session. In that bargaining, I'll do it for $10. Will you do it for $8? Took away all of that stuff, and those are key. And the other thing was you had a business structure. Grand Ole Opry was owned by an insurance company, and so those insurance executives who knew the business side, who weren't musicians, who didn't want to be musicians, they established that structure, that business structure, which let music grow. So all of those factors go into that.
Yeah. And as so you've done these 30 books. I know you've done some of them biographies or just stories, but I
Mhm.
mean, I'm looking at the list of your books like Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash, Gene Autry, Reba. I mean, you've kind of dove into to get to know some of these really, really super successful people or
Mhm.
musicians well. I'm
Yeah,
curious to know, is there some specific, behaviors or habits or things or just mindset that these individuals, I mean, can you isolate any specific thing that you're like, okay, if you could build the perfect musician, these are traits that that person's going to do or ways that they'll look at the world.
persistence. Persistence is key. Ambition. A lot of people that succeed have a driving ambition, and a lot of times they really can't do anything else. Uh, and so, but I think that that work ethic is so important. Luck plays a part in it, but luck's generally the last 5%,
Hmm.
because there's people that are equally talented, and one becomes a star and one doesn't. But I think you can make a living, whether in the business today, the way it is, uh, with your basic talent, you can make a living, and you make a living by that persistence, by staying on social media, by working on your songs. Uh, One of the things that I think is good for aspiring musicians, and they hate it, is to do cover songs just like the record, because that's going to show you some other licks. And the other thing, that's how you get paid for performing, uh, in the bars. And you're either going to go towards the bars or to the churches, depending upon where where you're at there. And there's people down on Lower Broadway in Nashville making a good living playing cover songs. And they have all of these brides to be coming in town to have one last blowout. And there's every weekend they're singing and dancing down on Lower Broadway. And so I think it's valuable. And the other thing, when somebody goes out now, Nashville, you can get away with it a little better, a little more often. But people sitting in a crowd, to listen to a singer songwriter, you need to give that audience something that they're familiar with to keep them interested. Yeah, you can do your own songs, but remember, there's two parts. There's a songwriter and there's the artist. And the songwriter wants self-expression. They want people to know how they feel about this or that. And the artist wants to attract a crowd. And I tell the students, that ask, I said, and you're playing bars. Remember, you're in the food and drink business. They were saying, oh, so and so likes my songs. Yeah, okay, but the reason he's hired you is to pull in a crowd, because he pulls in a crowd. And an easy way to do that is go to a bar on a Monday or Tuesday night and say, would you like some entertainment? Because it's their dead nights. And if you can pull in a crowd who will buy food and drinks, you've got you've got yourself a money making feature there. And of course, then you circle outside. You've got a hometown. I'm talking about before they get to Nashville. They'll have a hometown, and you play around there, and then you widen that circle a bit and keep widening it. And that's basically how um, Texas has it down to a science, where you got guys down there who just play Texas, and there's a Texas chart and everything. So, but they get to Nashville by broadening that circle, and that's what you do. And it's something they really want to do. It's living the dream, really. And it can't just be a dream. It's got to be work.
Yeah.
It's got to be work.
Well, if you've got a kid in one of these classes that's, they want to make it in the music business, one of the things I see, and I feel like this is a recurring theme with younger artists, but also even more experienced people that have even made it, is they call it sometimes imposter syndrome. where
Uh,
people feel like they're not good enough or they're not confident enough and they second guess themselves.
mhm.
What advice do you have for people as, when you get that moment where you're like, oh, I'm not as good as that person, or I'm not, they put in the work and the time, but for whatever reason, we just second guess our ability to,
Yeah,
I'm sure even sometimes with you, you're like, man, I've done 30 books, but who am I to write 31 books? I just think it's one of those that, until you've kind of lived long enough
yeah,
and been mature enough, I still think it's easy to second guess our abilities and ask why me, right?
yeah. I've seen that. I've talked to. In fact, I was talking to Eddie Arnold one time. I said, "Did you ever you wonder why you were the one picked, whether you were the big star?" And he says, "Yeah." And he didn't want to talk about it much, but he did. As Chris Christopherson said, "Why me, Lord?" And that imposter syndrome. But you've just got to plow through. You've just got to plow through it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's all I can say. Stay stay busy, or something like that. But uh, if you dwell on that too much, you lose your seat at the table. You know, you're not going to stick around. So you have to somehow figure out how to. And it helps if you have a wife or husband who's supportive, who can tell you the truth, pull you in line, and that you'll listen to them rather than run off and get a different husband or wife. uh, but I don't have an answer to that question. I mean, I see it. I've been around it. Um, but most people kind of keep it down. The ones successful ones kind of keep it down. It's not that they're denying this; they just don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's just, well, I got a lucky draw, so I'll try to give back. And that's a way that they can alleviate that by giving back, by doing a charity concert, or by volunteering for something, or that whole idea of helping other people, not just playing a song for them, but helping other people helps you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's key right there.
Well, so speaking of kind of the business, and especially I guess with the school you're at, they're right there on the, with all the recording studios all around, the relationships is something that I feel like is so important
Mm-hmm.
in this industry. When you have these kids coming into your classes, or just these younger musicians that want to come make it, that come into Nashville, how do you convince some young kid that doesn't feel like they're good enough to speak up and try to build relationships? How do you get somebody to just get over that? Because I feel like that imposter syndrome they have for those younger generation probably is a little more pervasive, especially in Nashville, because everybody's really good on the guitar
Yeah,
and singing. How do you what advice do you give those kids to let them know, hey, you're just you put your pants on the same way as everybody else. Come on, get out there and do
yeah.
it.
I don't. I really don't give much advice because they're not going to pay attention to it anyway. Uh, and that's not my gift. The empathy and the sympathy and all that. The one answer I give over and over again is get in front of a crowd, because the crowd will tell you. If you want to be an artist, get in front of a crowd. The crowd will tell you, and tell you pretty quick. Now, if they tell you no and you fold up your tent, you go home, it doesn't matter how talented you are. You weren't made for the business. You got to have a thick skin a lot of ways. Um, but that's my answer a lot. You get in front of a crowd and they're stomping and yelling and clapping, means you got something,
Yeah.
means you can do something. So that's the way I do it. I'm not a very good. I would never make a minister. Let's put it that way.
Just tell them how it is, right?
Yeah,
And the business it can be pretty harsh sometimes,
yeah.
but
It'll
um,
break your heart.
yep, it can. So you've got a brand new book coming out about a pretty good guitarist that I think a lot of people probably heard of. Uh, tell me a little bit about the that book and kind of
Well,
how did you end up deciding to write that specific book as well?
well, Chet Atkins, of course, is a legend. He was the most famous guitar player in the 20th century. Once we got in the 21st century, there's a lot of people who they probably heard the name but don't really know who he is. But he developed a style of guitar playing that nobody had done before. Most people play with a pick where they strum or the pick, plucks out the notes. Um, and he heard a guy named Merle Travis, and Merle Travis played what he called thumb picking, and the thumb gets on that tonic note. So if you're in C, it'll hit C, or maybe hit C and G, and then he played the melody on the high strings with the finger. What Chet did was he alternated with those bottom strings, and he would play. I'll give you the name of the strings. E. No, he would give you A, D, E, D, A, D, E, D over and over, and try it. It's hard to do,
Hmm.
and that's he was influential by being so famous. And of course, Chet could play anything, but a lot of people don't play in that style. So they do the finger style, which is usually thumb in one finger, or maybe thumb in two fingers, and it's slower. And Chet
Mhm.
could play up tempo songs like that. He he's an interesting story because he wasn't just a guitar player; he was an executive with RCA, head of RCA in Nashville, and he was a producer. Produced all these great songs. Eddie Arnold and Jim Reeves and Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson and a whole slew of people. Um, and the thing as a musician that I always thought was interesting about him, you know, you know a lot of guitar players, and they're really good and they're really accomplished, but they don't practice. They pick up a guitar, they have to pick up a guitar maybe every night or something, or they're playing a gig or they're doing sessions or whatever, but they don't really practice, run the scales and all of that. And Chet always practiced.
Hmm.
Even when he was very successful, he made himself sit down and practice every day. So that's a lesson for musicians right there. No matter how good you are, uh, keep practicing.
Interesting. And with his story, I mean, he was, I mean, all the way up until about 2000, I think. He was doing, still playing and doing things, right?
Well, the last year he would sit on his couch and hold his guitar, but yeah, he was up to that last year. Yeah, he still played. He had to have that audience. He needed that audience. And he couldn't play as well as he used to, and he always complained about that. But he kept playing,
Yeah.
and that gave that was his purpose. He gave him a purpose. Like I said, up to the last year when he had all those cancers, he had brain cancer and all those operations and all those things. So that took a toll. But yeah, played
So
up to the end.
so with that book, I mean, are there any like big lessons that you kind of gleaned from him that would help others? What's kind of that big, the two or three bullet point things that, major lessons that musicians ought to take away from his life and kind of his, what he was able to accomplish, other than practicing, I guess.
Yeah, Chet said that if you have to make someone practice, they're not going to make it. That you're looking for people who play, all the time. I'm familiar with Tommy Emmanuel, but Tommy Emmanuel never puts down a guitar. He is playing. You're talking to him, and he's still playing the guitar. Um, the first line in the book, I think, sums up Chet, and it said, "This is the story of a boy who fell in love with the guitar." And that's if you want to sum up Chet's life, that's it. This is the story of the boy who fell in love with the guitar, and he stayed in love with the guitar up till the end. Like I said, particularly those last 6 months or so, uh, he kind of lost it. Well, he was dying. Is
No.
what's happening. Um, yeah, I think I think that's good advice for a musician. He said one time about he used to sleep with his guitar. you know, and that all great musicians would sleep with their guitar. So it's just kind of uh, uh, well, it's a habit, but it's just a passion. for somebody. And you hear people say, I've got a passion for this, or this is my passion. But he proved it. I mean, of course, he had to be on the road to go to business meetings in New York and stuff like that. Always took a guitar.
Hmm.
Always took a guitar. That was a funny story. He went on a cruise, and he and his wife and another guy
Awesome. So the book it's available now or it's coming out real soon, right?
coming out June 1st.
June
It's
1st. We've
called
got to So if
it's
people
called
want to go find that, where's the best place for them to go to find that book?
well, right now it's Amazon. It's on pre-order. You can pre-order it.
Okay.
And of course, as soon as it comes out, then you get the book. That's the only. I haven't even gotten a copy of it. I haven't seen a copy of it yet. They're still printing it up or working on pictures, or I can't remember what they're doing now. But yeah, they should be winding it up pretty soon. But it's pre-ordered. You can pre-order on Amazon.
Gotcha. And will people be able to order it on your website as well, or is that likely to happen?
Not today. Not
Okay.
My website's getting worked on. I hesitate for anybody to go to the website. And I'm supposed to meet with the webmaster at the end of the week. I have a website and all of that, but
Yep.
it needed updating and all of that. So we're supposed to meet on Wednesday to find out how that can happen or when it'll happen.
Well, fantastic. Well, Don, I appreciate you taking time to just chat with us. I think just your insights, as many people as you've been around, you've just got a very unique perspective. It's rare that you find somebody who's, been into the Western Music Hall of Fame and just been so influential in just helping tell artists stories over the years.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah,
uh, I've got one last question for you. So
yeah,
as you're diving in and researching these individuals and, you know, some of I mean, some of them are alive, some aren't anymore. What's kind of your process to go dive in and kind of help uncover those really good stories, um, as you're putting a book together? Have you got any secrets to
yeah.
what do you do?
Well, you asked me how did I decide on to do the Chet book or any book, and it's not so much you pick them or you pick it, whatever the topic is that they pick you. And with Chet, because I knew Chet, I didn't know him well, but I knew him, and I'd interviewed him a couple of times, not long, in-depth interviewing. And then I'd run around, people would talk about him, and then I'd write an article about him. I'd read, next thing you know, you've done a little more and done a little more. You haven't really made a commitment then, but then you see, it's like rolling along and you're rolling with it. And so, and then the process is you talk to people that knew him, and you get, with the internet today, you can get so much stuff that you couldn't get before. You can pick up newspaper stories from Cincinnati and Minneapolis or something that
Hmm.
you couldn't do before. So all of that. We've got some good archives down here. Country Music Foundation has a good archive. Um, you go where they grew up, and I went over to East Tennessee to where he was born, and walked the area, and then I went down to Columbus, Georgia, which is where he went to school and where he developed that Chet Atkins style of playing. And just kind of, you breathe in the air, you absorb the artist, and then you listen to what he did. He had a bunch of albums. It's hard to say exactly how many because he'll be one cut on an album, or they'll repackage an album, a best of, or something like that. But he actually did about 100 albums,
Hmm.
and uh, to listen not just as background, but what is he doing? What is he saying? Interviews, all of those kinds of things. So it's just a matter of the same thing with becoming an artist. It's a matter of persistence, to keep going with it, and then you hit that stage when you're trying to finish it up when you hate the guy because you run out of energy. But we'll keep that part quiet.
Well, I just appreciate it. I mean, I'm going to take away persistence that's going to be my key word. I think I walk away with today is just sticking at it and showing up every day and,
Yeah.
practicing and, doing it over and over and over again. Just because it's almost like who you are versus,
Yeah.
I mean, you almost can't help it. I think with
Yeah.
these artists that really go big and like you said, they wouldn't have anything else, that they could do because they were so
Hmm.
meant to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing. For sure, people need to go check out that book. DonCusic.com is your website, and I know you've got a lot
Yeah.
of links to all of the books. And so, anybody
Yeah.
looking to really dive into country music history and just the stories with a lot of these famous people, I don't think there's anybody that's more well versed and told more stories in that realm than you have. So, thank you
Well,
for
thank you.
everything.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for everything you've done for that community and just for making, for helping tell the stories of these, great people that have done a whole lot for the, just the world with their music. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate our little interview here. It's been enlightening. I really enjoyed it. It's good. It's good talking about this stuff.
Well, thanks so much. We'll catch you. I may have to have you back on the next one because there's several other artists that I know you've written about that I think would be some very interesting stories. We'll get those on the next one.
Okay, I'll look forward to it.
Awesome. Hey, it's Jason here, and I hope you've gotten a lot of value out of this episode. Be sure to check out our show notes to learn more about our guest today, and if you'd like to support our podcast, there's a few things that you can do to help us grow. First, if you hit subscribe, it will help ensure that you don't miss a future episode. Second, if you'll share it with your friends on social media or send it via email or message, it helps us spread the word as well. And third, if you'll leave an honest review, it really helps with the algorithms so that other people can find our podcast. Finding success and fulfillment in the music industry is possible, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.